Octavia's Incredible Music Room Adventures. The French Horn Fiasco. Text by Susan Calkins. Illustrations by Robin Baird Lewis. Narration by Denzel Sinclair. Copyright 2022 Octavia's World. The beautiful thing about learning is nobody can take it away from you. B.B. King. Music class was almost over, and the fifth graders were busy putting instruments away. "Please sit down when you're done," said Mr. Brio. Once the kids were quietly seated on the rug, he asked, "Who can name the instruments of the brass family?" Talia raised her hand right away, and Mr. Brio pointed to her. Trumpet, tuba, trombone, and... I know there's another one." She shrugged her shoulders and looked up at the ceiling. Shane jumped up, waving his hand impatiently as he yelled out, "The French horn!" "Thank you, Talia and Shane," said Mr. Brio. "Trumpet, trombone, French horn, and tuba. But Shane, next time would you please try to wait until you're called on?" Shane, looking embarrassed, nodded his head. Octavia had been listening to their conversation. She was pretty sure she'd never seen a French horn. I wonder what it sounds like," she said to herself. Mr. Brio went to his desk and clicked a few keys on his laptop. Images of 4 different instruments popped up on the whiteboard. "Can you find the French horn in this picture?" he asked. From her hiding place at the back of the room, Octavia tried to find it. "Oh, yeah," said Talia. "It's that one in the middle, with the brass pipe twisted around it into a circle and a very wide opening, like a big mouth." "That's right, Talia. But what looks like a mouth is really known as the bell," said Mr. Brio. With a click of his laptop, the names of each instrument appeared on the whiteboard. "Now, folks, I have an announcement to make. Today we're going to be treated to a special concert performed by the Brass Tax, a professional brass quintet." The class responded enthusiastically. "Cool! That's awesome! When?" "Quintet! That means 5 of them," Shane called out. "Yes, Shane, 5 players," said Mr. Brio with a sigh. "Now, I'm sure you all know Sofia Hernandez, a 5th grader in Mr. Galinsky's class. Well, Sophia's dad happens to be a professional musician. He plays the French horn and is a member of the Brass Tax Quintet. They're arriving this afternoon to perform a concert in the school auditorium." Octavia was delighted to hear this. She hopped up and down, exclaiming, "Oh boy, a concert!" "Does that mean we get to skip reading?" Shane called out again. Looking at Shane, Mr. Brio rolled his eyes and said, "Your classroom teachers will let you know when it's time to go to the auditorium. I'm counting on all you 5th graders to set an example for the younger kids by showing them how to be a good audience. Now let's line up so you can get back to your classroom." By the time the kids had left, Octavia had made up her mind. She was going to go to that performance. The only problem was she had no clue how to get to the auditorium. In fact, she'd never been outside of the music room. Then she remembered. There's a school map posted on the wall just inside the door of the music room. I'll go take a look at it as soon as no one's around. The lunch bell rang. This was usually Mr. Brio's cue to head for the staff room. Octavia was ready to jump into action as soon as he was gone. Sure enough, he went to his desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out his green lunch bag. But instead of leaving, he put the bag on his desk and sat down. He pulled out a cloth napkin and tucked it into his collar, then took out a jar of pickles, an apple, a granola bar, and a large Italian sandwich wrapped in white paper. A wave of disappointment rushed over Octavia. Why is he here? She thought. And why did he have to choose today to stay in the music room for lunch? When will I look at that map? I hope the auditorium's not too far from the music room. All she could do was stand there and watch him eat. Mr. Brio was enjoying the last bite of his sandwich when 5 adults, each one carrying an instrument case, showed up at the door. He jumped up to greet them as he called out, "Benvenuto!" Octavia watched them enter the music room. "Hello, Mr. Hernandez," said Mr. Brio as he approached the group with open arms, "and members of the esteemed Brass Tax Ensemble. I'm Lorenzo Brio, the music teacher." "Call me Joel," said Mr. Hernandez, extending his hand to Mr. Brio, "and let me introduce the other members of our quintet. The trumpet players, Emily Watkins and George Blanton," he said. Mr. Brio nodded and smiled at each of them. "Then," Mr. Hernandez continued, "we have Marilee Hopewell on trombone and Filippo D'Angelo on tuba." "Pleased to meet all of you. We're so honored to have you here," said Mr. Brio. "The kids are very excited about this." Octavia noticed that one of the instrument cases was huge. That must be the tuba, she thought. The biggest and the lowest sounding instrument of the brass family. She had learned this from watching a Tubby the Tuba video. It was the day that Mr. Brio was absent and Coach Doran, the gym teacher, was assigned as the substitute. "I know absolutely nothing about teaching music," Coach announced to the second graders. "But I do know how to dance to it, and I've picked out some good tunes for us. So kids, let's get those bodies moving." Coach blasted loud rock music. He made up goofy dances and the kids went wild. It only took a couple of minutes before everyone was out of breath. Coach turned off the music and asked them to sit down on the rug. "Now for the rest of the music class, we're going to watch Tubby the Tuba. One of my all-time favorites," said Coach as he winked at the class. Just thinking about Coach's hilarious dance moves and the sight of those second graders imitating him made Octavia laugh. As he cleared off his desk, Mr. Brio said, "Please make yourselves at home. There aren't any more music classes for the rest of the day, so the room is all yours. I'll leave you here to warm up while I go open up the stage curtains and turn on some lights." "Thank you," replied Miss Watkins. The others nodded in agreement. "My pleasure," said Mr. Brio. "When I get back in a few minutes, I'll walk you down to the auditorium so you can see where you'll be performing. I'd also like to introduce you to Dr. Anthony, our school principal, before the kids come down for the concert. Do you need anything else? Chairs? Water?" "No, but thank you," said Mr. Hernandez. "Got it. I'll go get things ready there. See you in a few minutes," said Mr. Brio as he walked out. The musicians set their cases down on the floor, opened them up, and began connecting brass parts and attaching mouthpieces. "Wow! The tuba is enormous," said Octavia. But then Mr. Hernandez's French horn, with gracefully coiled brass tubes and a big shiny bell, captured her attention. "It's beautiful." The musicians started out by making some very loud honking and blatting noises. Octavia covered her ears until finally Mr. Hernandez waved his hand and they all stopped playing. Then he stuck his right fist into the bell, put the horn to his lips, and played a few clear notes. It sounded to Octavia like he could have been announcing the entrance of a king. The trombone echoed the French horn. Then the two of them launched into a perky duet. Soon after, the trumpets and tuba joined in. The sound of all 5 instruments playing together was so powerful it took Octavia's breath away. When the music ended, Mr. Hernandez said, "We're finally good with that one. I think we should make it the second piece on the program, right after the opening number, okay?" Just then, Mr. Brio walked in. "How are we doing? Are you folks ready to see the auditorium?" he asked. "Sure," they replied in unison. With that, they put down their instruments and followed Mr. Brio out the door. "This is my chance to look at the map," whispered Octavia. Without hesitating, she slid down a silk line to the floor and headed towards the music room door. But while passing by the French horn case that sat on the floor, she paused to look up. Like a golden mountain, the curved rim of the wide brass bell rose above her. It seemed to be calling to her. "Just a quick peek," she told herself as she climbed up the case and down into the blue velvet lining. This is so luxurious. I'd love to have a nest in here." With a little hop, she was on the smooth metal surface of the bell. It was so shiny she could see her reflection. Quickly, Octavia shimmied up its rim to the highest point. She took a quick look around, then slid down the back of it to land on a coil of brass pipe. Following the curled brass tube with her eyes, Octavia noticed that it got smaller and smaller until it ended at a silver mouthpiece. There was also a confusing tangle of twisted metal tubes, valves, and keys that were all connected to it. "Wow, this instrument is way more complicated than I'd imagined," Octavia remarked. After looking around, she made her way back to the wide open mouth of the bell and took a few cautious steps towards the cave-like opening. Leaning into the darkness, she called out, "Yoo-hoo!" and listened to her echo disappear. "I bet I could make it all the way through this tube and come out the other end through the mouthpiece," she said as she tiptoed deeper into the tunnel. Suddenly, everything went topsy-turvy, and Octavia was tumbling into darkness. Using every ounce of her strength, she stretched out all 8 legs and pressed hard against the inside walls of the damp, slippery tube as she tried to steady herself. Hearing muffled voices and footsteps, she realized right away what was happening. She was trapped inside the French horn, and Mr. Hernandez was carrying it to the school auditorium. "Oh dear, what have I done? What am I going to do now?" she cried. Next came the sound of the metal stage door opening and the distant babble of children's voices. She could tell they were now on the stage in front of the entire school. Then the horn stopped moving. Octavia's legs were trembling, but she didn't dare relax a single muscle. Things quieted down, and Mr. Brio started speaking. "Welcome, members of our Forest Friends community. I am honored to present some very fine musicians who are about to treat us to the amazing sounds of brass instruments. Trumpets, trombone, French horn, and the biggest one of all, the tuba. Now let's all give a big round of applause for the amazing Brass Quintet." Octavia heard loud clapping, and the horn was moving again. She scrunched up her eyes and held on tight, afraid of what was to come next. The first note they played was loud. A blast of warm air sent her tumbling back down the tube and crashing into Mr. Hernandez's fist. With a quick flick of his hand, she was tossed out of the horn and sent flying through the air. Octavia hit the stage curtain and tumbled to the floor. She wasn't injured, but her heart was racing. It took a while for her to realize that no one was looking at her. The first piece ended and the audience applauded. Octavia kept her eyes on Mr. Hernandez, thinking surely he would turn and look at her. But no, he just smiled at the audience and waved to his daughter, Sophia. They started playing again. This time the melody seemed familiar to Octavia. "Oh, it's that catchy tune they were practicing in the music room," she thought. Burrowing into the folds of the curtain, she peered out at the stage to listen. It was the first time she'd been at a concert, and she was so excited that she forgot to worry about how she'd find her way back to the safety of her nest in the music room. The performance ended and the musicians took their final bows. Mr. Brio stood by the open stage door, flashing 2 thumbs up as they exited. Octavia skittered to the back of the stage just before Mr. Brio closed the curtains and flicked off the lights. Then the stage door slammed shut and Octavia was alone in the darkness. All she could see was a tiny sliver of light shining through at the bottom edge of the door. "I can get you there," she said, "but not now. I'll have to wait until school's out. But how on earth am I going to find my way to the music room?" She closed her eyes and tried to think. It seemed like only a few minutes had passed when the school bell jolted Octavia awake. The sound of kids tromping through the hallway, voices and laughter, told her that school was out. She waited until it was quiet in the hall before moving towards the door. "No one's around. Now which way should I go?" To her left was a long hall with a door at the end. It had a window, and through it she could see trees. "It can't be that way. I'll go right." It was a long corridor with doors on either side. It ended at another hallway. She moved quickly, staying close to the wall. Not far down the hall, she reached a doorway and stopped to peek inside. There was Mr. Galinsky, sitting at his desk and looking down at a pile of papers. Skittering past that door, she came upon another one across the hall. Crouching against the wall, she peered through that doorway to see Miss Mowgli, the 4th grade teacher, looking out the window and watering plants. Octavia continued on, climbing over a pair of sneakers, a backpack, and a flute case that had been left behind in the hallway. At the end of the hall, she stopped. "Left or right? Which way this time?" she asked herself. Before making up her mind, though, she heard the sound of a piano coming from down the hall to her left. "That's Mr. Brio, in the music room. Yay, I'm almost there," she declared. Making a dash across the hallway, she took off towards the sound of the piano. The music room door was open, but Octavia hesitated before entering. "If Mr. Brio sees me, I'm in big trouble," she thought. He continued playing and she decided to make a run for it. Charging through the door, Octavia ran full speed ahead across the room. She took a huge leap onto the xylophone shelf, then turned around to see that Mr. Brio hadn't even noticed her. "Phew!" she exclaimed as she climbed into her nest. Curling herself into the shape of a French horn, she thought, "I may never be able to play that instrument, but I sure do like the sound of it." The next morning was a Saturday, which meant Octavia had the whole music room to herself. She woke up with a melody running through her head. It stayed with her even after she started working on her project for the day, spinning a new web. She hummed along with it as she worked. It took a while before she realized where it had come from. "It's that catchy melody from yesterday's Brass Quintet concert."
It's got me dancing to this nice little beat. I've tried to sing something else, an old familiar song, but even though I try my best, it just comes out all wrong. This new melody's a repeating refrain that keeps on echoing in my brain, and I'll just have to accept this sweet little song will keep me company the whole day long.
By the end of the day, Octavia had more than one reason to be pleased with herself. She had not only created the most intricate and beautiful web she could have ever imagined, she'd also invented her own lyrics to go with that melody.